Welcome to episode 387 of the show. We are still on the questions from the Evolve Africa Instagram live session. And don't worry, this isn't going to last for too long. I think before we get to next week, we should be over and done with this. But however, the questions are still valid, so I think we should keep on plodding along. So the next question that Felicia and the good guys at Evolve Africa wanted us to explore was how to keep customers. Now, what I told to them and what I'm going to tell to you guys is that basically keeping customers is the problem of your client retention and and customer service processes. So let me repeat that again. Client retention processes and customer service processes. And I know that some of you, well, everyone has said of customer service processes, but I'm sure the rest of you are wondering what are client retention processes. But anyway, we'll explore some of that as we go along in this episode. Now, when I say that keeping your customers boils down to client retention and customer service, I'm making a very big assumption. I'm assuming that your product or service is good or great to begin with, because if you have a defective product or service, then you have to go back to step one because this isn't for you. So, in other words, if you're a wedding photographer and you don't have decent composition skills, decent framing skills, decent editing skills, then you're in really big. You have a big problem. So, customer service skills and customer retention is not going to help you. If you're a wedding planner, you don't have a professional demeanor, you don't have well-trained staff, you're not good at project management skills, and your execution skills are subpar, then you have a problem. Customer service is not going to help you out on this one. And then if you're an MC, but you don't have good crowd interaction, you don't have good language skills, comportment, stuff like that, you get the picture. So for customer service skills to work and for client retention processes to be effective, you have to be good or great at your underlying craft. So you have to get good at the basics. And then when you've gone past the basics, then we cannot worry about client retention processes and customer service processes and all the other protocols that we can decide on. So just in case you guys didn't get it, when it comes to the quality of service, nowadays it's just entry stakes. There was a time when your service in itself could be a distinguishing factor, but not today. And that's because information is freely available on the internet. So photographers can learn composition, framing, editing. Planners can learn project management, execution skills, can get certified in lots of things. And MCs can become good at public speaking and all that stuff. So we can learn that from books, YouTube, podcasts, and stuff like that. So now, being good is not a distinguishing factor anymore. It's just entry stakes. So let's make sure that we've mastered the basics before we get into the business. Now back to customer service processes and client retention processes. These are things that we have to decide on well ahead of time, and it's not a good idea to flesh things out as you go or to leave it to employees and your associates to try and figure it out on your own. It's something that I've spoken about a lot on the podcast. No freestyling when it comes to sales and marketing. Now, the reason why is because things have to be well thought out and consistently applied over time to get the desired effect. So if you don't think it out, sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not going to work, it's going to be hit and miss. And then there's that thing of consistent application. The best results come when you keep doing things the same way over and over and over and over again. So that is how you're going to get the best out of the whole process. And in fact, if you don't decide on this thing ahead of time and you leave people to freestyle, sometimes it might actually hurt your business because you might have one employee who's really good at it, let's say Chukudi or Chinasa, and Chinasa is really good at doing these sorts of things. But then tomorrow you have Kunle on the phone, and then Kunle has no skill or aptitude or whatever, and then he completely ruins it for clients for that day. So all the good impressions that have been made by Chinasa or Chinedu or whoever was on the phone last week or yesterday, that's going to have a good effect because people usually talk about good service. But studies have shown, unfortunately, in the West anyway, but I'm willing to bet that it's going to be the same in Nigeria. That people who have negative experiences are going to talk about them more. So Chinasa and Chinedu can do a good job, only for Kunle to come and touch things tomorrow, because tomorrow, next week, next month, however long he's going to be on the phone, if he pisses off 20 people, those 20 people are going to talk to 100 more, and you can see the downward spiraling effect. So think about these things well ahead of time, decide them well ahead of time, think through them. Do not let people freestyle. Now, what are client retention processes? I'll leave you guys to come up with yours, but in my own opinion, your client retention process has to work through a couple of things. Number one, you have to have the debrief. You have to make sure that everybody is satisfied when you're done delivering whatever it is that you do. So after you're done with the wedding, I'll leave the timing up to you, but it has to be reasonably soon after you guys carried out the project. So if the client got married in January, let's say January 31st, it'll be, if you call them in November to do a debrief, it's manageable, but preferably, let's say the wedding finished January 31st, and you wanted to give them 2 weeks to go for their honeymoon, and so you call them right around the Valentine's mark, that would be okay. So immediately after the wedding, or after they get back from the honeymoon, or if you're a wedding photographer or videographer, after you have delivered the album, after you shipped it off to them, and then you get in touch. So you call them up over the phone, or if you're one of those people who don't like the phones and you do email, the process is still the same, although I am advocating that you do phone or video if you're brave enough. But if you can't, then WhatsApp, SMS, and all those other text-based media that are not as daunting for you guys. So the first point of call is when you reach out to do the debrief. You have to be sure that everybody is happy. You're trying to figure out what it is that you did right. You're trying to figure out what it is that you could have done better. Now, when you do this, you're going to get some intel, and if you implement this feedback over time, you're going to get a much better user experience. And the better your user experience gets, the more customers are going to stick with you or recommend you to other people. So you can see how this debrief, even if you don't think it solves anything now, is going to make you much better, make your business product or service, and your overall delivery going to get better over time. So it's invaluable. So remember, do the debrief, figure out what went well, what you guys did right, what you could have done better, what they really like, implement the feedback. Customers stick with you over the long haul, and you get more customers to come back over time because you improve the user experience. Then where was I? Okay, debrief and then implementation. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay, yes. So eventually, you're going to run into some problems, and that is where customer service processes come in. But it's also can be tied into this debrief process, because sometimes you're going to reach out to the bride and you're going to say, Kemi, it was a blast planning your wedding. I hope you guys had fun. And then Kemi's going to say, Funke. That time when you guys were sharing food, it only went to the Ohakwe's, but it didn't go to the Adedejos. It embarrassed me. It made me like this. It made me like that. And now you know that you have a problem on your hands. So what do you do when you have a problem through this debrief experience? This is where your customer service processes snap into effect. So you have to take the initiative to solve the problems when this feedback bring up all these negative areas. You have to dive in and come up with ideas on how to fix things. This is not the time to start making excuses to say that the reason why the food got to the Ohakwe's but didn't get to the Adedejos is because one Adedejo auntie came and she said this and she said that and she was throwing a fit, and then you had to that's why you had to bring in the bouncer to send her away, or whatever. This is not the time to try and throw blame here or there. So like I said, your customer service processes are closely tied to what happens in client retention, except that usually when people think customer service, they think that there's a problem on hand, and but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Customer service is not just for when things go bad. So pretty much, in my own opinion, customer service and client retention should have the same goal and pretty much the same activities. Now, what are customer service protocols and how do they help you keep a customer? Like I said, number one, take responsibility. This is not the time to blame the client. So you're the wedding planner. This is not the time to blame her brother, blame her aunt, or blame the village people, or whatever. So take responsibility. Now, when I say take responsibility, usually in my live sessions, I get some people who want to kick back and say that why should we take responsibility? We are not at fault. And that's a good way to look at it. But let's remember one thing, that taking responsibility is not the same thing as acknowledging fault. The fault can still be that big auntie from the Adedejo's side. The fault can still be the bride's, but you have to take responsibility to solve the problem. So saying, I'm sorry for how things turned out, that's not the way we do business, is really regrettable. I take responsibility and I'm going to make sure that we solve this to, we're going to solve this to the best of our ability and make sure that you and your aunt are going to be satisfied. Really sorry for how things turned out. That's not the same thing as saying the fault was all mine. I'm only saying I'm going to take responsibility for fixing it. I'm not making a comment on whose fault it is, even if the fault was actually the bride's or her auntie's. So take responsibility to solve the problem. So that's it. I'm really sorry. That's not how we do business. We take responsibility. We're going to solve the problem. And then number two, you have to acknowledge their pain, show some empathy, and ask for permission to ask questions. So acknowledging pain and showing empathy, some people do this better than others. This is the part where someone like my wife, because my wife is really good at this sort of stuff, will talk about stuff like, oh my God, I'm really, really sorry. Yes, I know how this thing might feel, because during my own wedding, this is what happened, this must happen. I must have been thoroughly embarrassing. I'm really, really sorry. Forgive me. I take responsibility. Don't worry, Kemi. We are going to solve this thing. So the whole idea is to empathize, show that you understand, acknowledge their pain. It's not something I do pretty well, so I know that this is something I have to work on, the whole empathic part. But it's essential because people need to know that they have been heard and that they have been acknowledged. Because once they know that they've been heard and they've been acknowledged, it takes off some of the edge from the attack. Because this thing has come up and the bride is angry or the groom is angry about how you treated his uncles, or about stuff that was missing from the wedding album or the video footage. So they're really angry, and anger is like at 100%. Trying to solve a problem when people are angry 100%, it's not going to help you much. But if you're able to acknowledge and then things calm down to about 50 or 40%, then with them being calmer, you're going to be able to make some headway. So show some empathy and remember to ask permission to ask for some questions. Is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions? The reason why this is important is because if you don't ask questions, you're not going to get to the root of what happened and you won't know exactly what to address or the most effective way of addressing the problem. So if you just stay there and then try to blame her aunt, rather apologize, take responsibility, ask a couple of questions, you now get a sense of what it is that happened with her aunt, and then how the role of your staff may have may have added to the problem, to aggravate the whole situation. So ask questions. You need to get a sense of what are they unhappy about and what was the problem. And then once you have asked a couple of questions, acknowledge, so they're now a little bit more calm and then they're ready to talk. Oh, by the way, in case you haven't figured it out, this is the reason why I say it's best to do this over the phone. If you're going to do this over WhatsApp, this is going to be a very laborious process of typing back and forth. You type this, you type that, you type this. But if you pick up the phone and you're going through this exercise, you can be done with this in 5, 10 minutes. If it was a really bad thing, maybe you guys will be on the phone for 15 minutes. But bottom line is, you can start the conversation today and you can make headway today rather than chatting and then the whole process ends up taking 4 or 5 days, maybe 1 week. So that's the reason why I advocate the phone when it comes to these sorts of things. So where was I? Yes, now you also have to give clear time frames, and you also have to give plans or suggestions for how you're going to resolve the problem. So don't say anything vague like, we are going to discipline Temisa, let me handle it, I will get back to you. You have to give clear timelines and say something specific. We're terribly sorry for what it is that happened. I'm going to reach out to your aunt tomorrow evening latest to apologize to her personally for what it is that happened, and blah blah blah. Since I'm not a wedding planner, I don't know what it is that you guys would recommend for how to solve these sorts of issues, so I'm going to leave it at that. But bottom line is, if an apology to the aunt or to the uncle or to the umuna or whoever, if that's going to be on the cards, then you have to give a specific time frame. Don't just say leave it with me, I'll get back to you, I'll be on top of it, let me give you feedback later, blah blah blah. It's, I'm going to call your aunt before tomorrow morning to apologize to her. Oh, this is unacceptable. You know what? In fact, your auntie lives in Guarin Parabi, and no problem. That's 30 minutes away. Just give me her phone number. Let me call her. I'll go and apologize to her myself, personally, before tomorrow evening latest. So in that case, there's something that you have proposed, and you've given a specific time frame. Now, remember, I'm not a wedding planner. I do not handle these sorts of things, so I do not know the best ways about how these things are supposed to be resolved. So I am not recommending that this is what you do in all situations. I'm just freestyling here, and this is one of the benefits of live sessions with my clients, and this is one of the reasons why, if I'm handling any of the sessions for you, I'm going to insist that you are there in the room. Because if I'm talking to you guys and you people are wedding planners, you are the ones who are going to know what means of redressing are workable and what are not. So I'll just be there to guide the whole process. And so that's the reason why I insist these trainings. So just like with the last one that we did, the last one that I mentioned to you guys for the real estate company, the Kairos real estate company, I insisted that the sales manager has to be there, because when we're working through these particular issues, these particular scenarios, I need to have one of the bosses there, or the professionals, because I'm not a real estate professional, to be able to say, no, actually, when we're trying to solve XYZ in real estate, this is how it's supposed to be done. And then I now bring my own knowledge of handling conversations and sales processes to show how the best way to smooth it out. So, I'm not advocating that this is what you do, but I'm just running with the scenario. Then, when you are done, remember you've given a specific time frame and you've given a plan for how you're going to resolve this. Give updates as soon as you have them. So if you've spoken to Auntie Adedejo and things went well or things didn't go too well, give updates as soon as you have them. Now, this one might sound controversial, but I'm one of those who believes that I don't have any updates and I don't know why there is a delay. I think that is also an update rather than just keeping quiet, because I've been in that situation where we had a client was supposed to deliver. The wedding album had been delivered because that was produced in Lagos, and so that was totally within our own control. But the custom frames were produced outside the country. They were produced in Salt Lake City in America, and that was the time when the Nigerians custom service went on strike, and so the flash drives were trapped in Lagos. And I think it was a union issue. I don't think custom members are supposed to be able to be members of a union, but that's another point. That's another thing from a legal point of view. And I fancy, I'm interested in these sorts of things because my first background was in law. So when I hear that customs officers go on strike and police officers go on strike and stuff like that, there are wider policy issues to be explored. But anyway, that's beyond the scope of the podcast. So where are we? Okay, yeah. So at that time, at some point, I have absolutely no idea why the process is being stalled. I mean, I don't have any updates. Can also be an update. It's better than keeping quiet for 1 week, and then the bride is getting angry, and she's getting pissed off, and she thinks you guys have dropped the ball, and then she sees on your Instagram that you shot somebody else's wedding, and she's like, oh, no wonder. You shot Dangote's daughter's wedding. You're collecting millions. So the 200K, the 300K that she paid you is not money. And then she's getting angry and really angry. So calling up to say, I don't have an update is actually better than nothing. Although, in my own case, like I said, when I recommended earlier that we should always have a plan, I called up to say no updates, but I also had a plan. I was like, I have somebody in Lagos. Let me just have him go over to Apapa. Let's see if we can find out anything. And the bride, she was real reasonable. She was like, no, it's okay. No wahala. This is a national thing. Everybody knows what's up. When the strike gets resolved, I'm sure everything can be delivered and there won't be any problem. Oh, besides, we love the wedding album, blah, 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 blah. And that's how we smooth things out. So give updates as soon as you have. And I am one of those who believes that I'm sorry I have no updates and I don't know what's wrong. It's also an update. It's better than being quiet. If I run into someone else, a customer service professional, and they have better ways about giving updates when you have no updates to give, I'll be sure to share with you guys on the podcast. Then, whenever you make proposals, you have to gain buy-in for your proposal. You have to gain permission or some sort of agreement. So, if you say you're going to go and apologize to Auntie, I can't remember the name I used. Did I say Adedejo? Okay. Anyway, you have to go and you want to apologize to Big Aunt. You have to be sure that that's okay. So, you ask. I'm a little bit formal, so I probably would say something like, is that okay with you? Or would your auntie have a problem with that? But it's something that you have to flesh out, given your relationship with your client, with the bride, and the kind of rapport that you guys have. And like I said on earlier episodes, because my video guy, Shegun, is a Yoruba guy, and there are times when he falls into Yoruba whenever we're dealing with Yoruba folk, especially if they've been vibing really well. So if that's how you guys have been vibing, you've been vibing in Hausa, you've been vibing in Yoruba, it's okay for this conversation to happen in Yoruba, in Hausa, in Igbo, in Tiv, in Gas, in whatever language it is. Doesn't have to be English, doesn't have to be formal. So gain some buy-in, and then go ahead and put the plan in play. Then after that, we have to do another debrief again to be sure that everybody is happy with how we resolved the problem. So I'm sure, as you can see, that it's not a linear process. It can be quite circular sometimes, starting, going through, resolve one problem, resolve two, resolve three. But eventually, these are good processes to adopt, and the goal of client retention and customer service is to be sure that you have a satisfied client. So that's why we're doing all this back and forth. Now, why is it important to be sure that they're satisfied? I've hinted at it earlier, and just in case you guys didn't pick on that, I'll repeat it. The reason why we're trying to make sure that we have a satisfied client is because it is only when we have a satisfied client, a happy client, or at least where the client can see that we're not total jackasses and that we are competent and we're professionals. It's only when we get to this point that we can ask them for referrals. Is there anybody else who's getting married who could use our services? Overheard the bridesmaids, when you were talking with the bridesmaids, Nika is getting married in December. Can I have a phone number so I can reach out to her? All those conversations where you're looking for referrals. That can only happen when people are happy. If the bride is angry about what happened with her big aunt, or the groom is angry because of what happened with his uncles, he will say, yeah, I'll send you the number. But he's not going to send it. And by the time you ask 2 or 3 times, the groom's going to be thinking, can you imagine the nerve on this guy? I mean, after the rubbish that they pulled, he wants me to now give them Kunle's phone number. For what? So they can now go and mess him up. No, I'm not going to do that. So make sure everybody's happy and satisfied. Then we can ask for referrals. Then we can ask for repeat business. And we can also ask for permission to stay in touch with them. And that is what will allow us to periodically inform them when we have new stuff. To say, hey, what's up, buyer? How are you doing now? Blah, blah, blah. How's madam? How's the kids? Oh, by the way, it's not just wedding videos that we do now. We've started doing documentary work. I know that you work with UNICEF. So, yeah, that's the kind of things you do. We've done some work for the British Council, blah, 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 blah. Can I send you and your boss a proposal? All those conversations, basically, when you're expanding your products and your services, that is what is going to allow you to keep in touch ask for permission to keep in touch when we're sure that we have a satisfied client. So that basically is how we keep our customers, and not just to keep them, but by getting other people to come do business with us as well, get referrals from them. Because the goal isn't just to keep the clients that we have, but to get them to bring others along for the ride. And this is your introduction. I'll have to wrap it up because we've done 25 minutes now. This is your introduction basically to what client retention processes and customer service processes, what they are all about. So thank you very much for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Abuja-based sales and business consultant, Tavishima George Aide. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next recording.